The role of music in Islam is one of the most debated and nuanced topics in Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh. There is no single, monolithic position that all Muslims adhere to. Instead, there is a spectrum of opinions, ranging from complete prohibition to full acceptance, with many positions in between. The three main schools of thought: 1. The prohibitionist view, predominantly Salafi, Wahhabi and some Hanbali scholars. This view holds that most musical instruments and listening to music for entertainment are haram, forbidden. Quranic interpretations: Surah Luqman 31:6, and of the people is he who buys the amusement of speech, Lawul Hadith, to mislead from the way of Allah without knowledge and who takes it in ridicule. For those there will be a humiliating punishment. Some classical commentators, like Ibn Abbas and Ibn Masud, interpreted amusement of speech as singing or music. Hadith, prophetic traditions. The most frequently cited hadith is, "From among my followers there will be some people who will consider illegal sexual intercourse, the wearing of silk, the drinking of alcoholic drinks, and the use of musical instruments as lawful." Sahih al-Bukhari. Here, musical instruments, mazif, are grouped with major sins. Other hadith mention that the Prophet condemned singing and the use of instruments like wind instruments and drums in a negative context. The principle of blocking the means, Sad al-Dari. This view argues that music often leads to sinful outcomes, such as promiscuity, neglect of religious duties, and listening to inappropriate lyrics, so it should be blocked at the source. 2. The permissive view, many Sufi and liberal scholars. This view holds that music, in and of itself, is halal, permissible, and can be a positive spiritual and cultural force. Quranic interpretations. They argue that the Quran does not explicitly prohibit music. The verse in Surah Luqman is interpreted as referring to idle talk that distracts from God's path, not music inherently. They point to verses that speak of the beauty of David's, Dawood, voice and the natural music of creation, e.g., the singing of birds. Hadith and historical practice. They cite instances from the Prophet's life where music was present, such as the Harda, singing with drum accompaniment, during the 2 Eid festivals and weddings. The Prophet allowed 2 young girls to sing and play the daf in his home on the day of Eid. The use of singing during work, like when the Ansar were digging the trench in Medina. They argue that the hadith in Bukhari about musical instruments has weaknesses in its chain of transmission or is not generalizable. Cultural acceptance. Throughout Islamic history, especially during the Golden Age, music was a highly developed art form, patronized by caliphs and celebrated by poets and scholars like Al-Farabi and Rumi. 3. The middle path, conditional view, the majority scholarly opinion. This is the most common and nuanced position, held by many scholars from the Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanafi schools. It states that the permissibility of music is not absolute but depends on the content, context, and instrument. Key conditions for permissibility: type of instrument, generally permitted, the daf, a simple hand drum, similar to a tambourine without jingles, is widely agreed to be permissible, especially for weddings and Eid. Debated, generally prohibited, stringed instruments, like the oud, violin, guitar, and wind instruments, like the flute, are considered makruh, disliked, or haram by many in this group, though some permit them. Content of the lyrics. The lyrics must not be obscene, promote sin, encourage violence, or contradict Islamic beliefs, e.g., praising alcohol, illicit relationships, or shirk. Songs about love of God, nature, and virtuous themes are more readily accepted. Context and occasion. Music is more acceptable in specific, joyful contexts like weddings, festivals, Eid, and celebrations. Effect on the listener. If the music leads to neglecting religious duties, like prayer, promotes immoral behavior, or intoxicates the mind with lust or other base emotions, it becomes forbidden. Company and setting. Mixed gender gatherings with music are viewed with much greater strictness and are often prohibited to prevent fitna, temptation, social discord. The special case of nasheeds, a common compromise in many Muslim communities, is the nasheed, plural, anasheed. These are Islamic vocal songs that are often performed a cappella or with only percussion instruments, like the daf. This avoids the controversy over melodic instruments while allowing for artistic and spiritual expression. To conclude, the role of music in Islam is not a simple yes or no, but a complex issue of jurisprudence. For an individual Muslim, the practice often comes down to which scholarly opinion they follow, their personal conscience and intention, the cultural context they live in. The overarching principle shared by all is that anything should be evaluated based on whether it brings a person closer to God or leads them away from their faith. As with many issues in Islam, the focus is on the spirit of the law, promoting good, preventing harm, and maintaining spiritual well-being, rather than just the letter of the law.